educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a special guest today. He is a leading authority on U.S. federal government contracts. He's a military acquisitions officer. He oversaw $82 billion in DoD contracts, and he's going to give us some little insights today. I hope that you enjoy this episode today. He has a wealth of information. Listen to all his podcasts, all the other episodes that he's been on, people that he's interviewed. It has been interesting for me because I have never dove all the way into government contracts. I looked into it. My wife does do grant writing, but I have not always gone all the way into it. So let's learn a little something today. He is a retired lieutenant colonel from the United States Air Force, and we thank him for his service today. He is none other than Richard Howard. Thank you very much, Richard, for coming on today.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on.
Cool. So we're going to jump right into it, everyone. I listened to your podcast, and again, great information. But one of the things that I had a question about: how can small businesses find opportunities to sell their products or services to the government, and what resources are available to help them navigate that process?
Sure. That's a really good question. And so the short answer to that is you can go to sam.gov, sam.gov. It's a government website. It's where you register your company to sell. But you can also take a look at some of the solicitations that are coming out from the government and start getting a sense of what the government needs. Mm-hmm. The long answer to that question is, or the longer answer, and another resource companies can use. I would say first, think of the U.S. government as not somebody that just buys weapons and things like that, but the U.S. government is the single biggest purchaser of goods and services in the world. Mm-hmm. They buy everything that you can think of, from social media management and advertising to landscaping to products that you would buy in a grocery store to accounting and legal services. The list goes on. And if you really want to see what the government's spending, if you have a small business or a niche, go to usaspending.gov. Okay. And without going into how to do that, they can listen on my podcast if they want a tutorial or something. Correct. But they can go in there and you can look by category and see, hey, what is the government doing? And you might see that they're spending $500 million every 2 years on what you're selling. And that might make it a little bit more intriguing for you to look at selling to the government.
So how can a small business ensure that their proposals stand out and are competitive to, government procurement process?
Yeah, so that is a much more complicated answer, right? So what I'd say is this, and I don't want to give anybody the idea that selling to the government is easy. Okay, right, selling to the government is not easy. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges is it does take a long time compared to commercial sales. Mm-hmm. Think 1 to 2 years, right? But the contracts tend to be a lot more lucrative and stable, so they can add a lot of value to your business. And they can certainly, it's another stream of revenue that's for the most part not going to be affected by the economy the way, your other B2B, B2C sales are. But because the government buys in a different way, we need to think about it a little differently. So you mentioned the proposals. Right. I don't let my clients, for instance, respond to requests for proposals or even write a proposal unless we've actually talked to the government office first. So what that means is you're really, once you do the drill of figuring out, does the government buy what you sell and kind of which agencies, because you can get that breakdown also on usaspending.gov. Okay. Well, let's say that it's the Air Force, right? Since that's where I came from, I like talking about the Air Force. So the Air Force is going to have different offices that buy things, right? So most people in the government can't buy anything. It's specific offices with warranted contracting officers and acquisitions professionals are going to do the buying. So once I know which offices buy what I sell, now there are ways for me to find opportunities ahead of time. And this is what's going to make you stand out. So if you're an accountant and you want to start selling accounting services to the government, and I find out that Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, HNJ, whatever, is the office that's actually doing a lot of the buying there, well, now I can look for things like requests for information, sources sought, instead of RFPs and RFQs. That allows me to basically respond to the government, let them know like what we can do, how we can answer their problem, how we can provide value. It might, if I was, for instance, a woman-owned small business, I might be able to ask them to set this aside for a woman-owned small business, and that's going to eliminate competition. And you can also request a meeting as a follow-up. And so now you're developing a relationship with the office. You're shaping the requirements that are going to be in the eventual solicitation. And you're setting yourself up to win in a much better way when you do have to write a proposal. So that's probably the single biggest thing any company can do to start winning contracts with the government.
So let me ask this. Let's go all the way to the beginning of the life cycle of a company, right? So what would they need to have set up in order for them to even consider, putting themselves in front of the government? Do they need to have their Duns and Bradford information? Like, what else do they need to get started to even consider that?
Good question. So for probably 95% of the businesses I talk to, I tell them, don't think about selling to the government unless you have not just an established business, but a business that's already selling commercially. Right. So if you have a company, whether you're a solopreneur or you have, 5 to 10 people or 100 people working for you, if you're selling a product or service commercially and have that type of past performance, now start looking at if the government's spending in your area. Now, what you need to register is you're going to need your tax ID information for your business. And there are some other parameters. So if you go to sam.gov, it's going to give you everything that you need. There's a list that you can download of the documents you need before you register. And then you go through that registration process, and they don't use the DUNS number anymore. But when you register, they'll give you a cage code. And they'll give you something called a UEI number, which is a unique identifier. I don't remember what the E stands for. Unique entity identifier, maybe. And so that's a UEI number, but hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. So, what are some of the key factors that government agencies consider when selecting vendors, and how can small businesses align their proposals with these criteria?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So the hardest contract you're going to win is probably your first contract with the government, right? But provided you do have at least a viable product, solution, service that you've been selling commercially, that's going to inspire a certain amount of confidence. The next thing that you could do, and everyone's a little bit different, so we want to make sure that that everybody knows that it's going to be different selling office supplies versus a cybersecurity solution, for instance. But you can do a few things. You might partner with a business that already has business with the government or is doing business with the government on a solution offering. So you might be a subcontractor. So one thing you can do is you might win a subcontract at first, and that's going to give you a little bit of, it's not the same past performance as if you were a prime, but it is going to give you past performance working with a government agency. And the other thing, I'm going to foot stomp it again, is what's going to set you apart the most is finding opportunities ahead of the solicitation and influencing and reaching out and setting up a relationship with the office. Because look, if you're talking, like when I was a program manager, the companies that were winning, they knew they had to talk to us ahead of time, because you're finding out a lot. It takes a lot of work for the government to actually put a solicitation out there. And so all the information is probably not going to be in it. I mean, it couldn't be. It might be too long, or they might just not be thinking about it. But if you have the chance to talk with the people that are writing that and influence that, you're going to find out, you're going to have a better idea of what they really need. And that's going to allow you to write a better proposal that really hits the mark. It's also going to give you a relationship with them. in some cases, you might have something really unique, and that could turn into a sole source contract where you're not even competing with anybody, right?
Right,
So
right.
that's probably rare, but it still happens. So again, hopefully that gets to how you can set yourself apart,
Mm-hmm.
and set yourself up for success. And then once you start selling to the government, you're building up that past performance. You do a good job. And that's probably what I should have started with is make sure that you have an amazing solution, or you provide an amazing service, because that's really what we're looking for. Can you solve our problem, and are you a company we can rely on?
So something that you had touched on, which is building the relationships and or networking, right? How can someone start that process of building that relationship first? Like because everything we know, we everything is about relationships. So how
Yep.
do you start building up that relationship with the government in order for you to get to the next level?
Yeah, and that's a good point because a lot of people don't think selling to the government involves the relationships like it does in a regular business or regular sales, but
Mm-hmm.
it's crucially important.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, it's also, hey, how do I develop that? Because you can't just go knock on doors like you
No.
could if you were, maybe a real estate agent or something else. You can't just get onto the base, and
Right.
even if you could, you probably wouldn't be knocking on doors of people that could buy anything from you.
Right.
This is why I tell people uh, this is one way is when you're in sam.gov, you're registered, you're looking for requests for information and sources sought. I'm going back to that again because
Mm-hmm.
we're in something called the market research phase
Okay.
where,
Okay.
the government's allowed to talk to companies because they haven't set the requirements yet. So when an RFI or sources sought comes out, you're getting the contact, the government contact. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be a TPOC or it could be meaning a technical point of contact, or it might be the program manager or the
Mm.
contracting officer. You have a list of questions they're interested in. So this is the beginning of it's one way of beginning that relationship with the government. You're providing value to them. It might
Okay.
be a 10-page or 5-page paper that you're filling out and writing and giving to them.
Hmm.
But you're also, because they requested that, they have money, they have to buy something. You've responded to them. Now you've opened up the channel of communication, and now you
Mm.
can do things like, hey, I've sent you my response for tax preparation services or
Mm-hmm.
landscaping even, right? But let's set up a meeting because I'd really
Mm-hmm.
like to talk about some of the differences of our business, and maybe I can help you with what you're doing. Maybe I can provide value in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a great way to start setting up meetings with people that can buy from you and are interested.
So one of the things that you keep mentioning in some of your examples being landscaping, right? That's sounds so simple, right? But
Yeah.
when you think about working with the government, you're almost expecting that you have to have such an elaborate organization do such extraordinary, work. So what is it? You make it sound so simple. So is it really that type that that simple?
Well, I'm trying not to, I don't want people to think it's easy, right? So maybe but it's not rocket science either. I
Right.
think it's more like running a marathon, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
small amount of effort over a long period of time. If
Mm-hmm.
you're doing the right things, you're going to get the results that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's landscaping, if it's something like that, which the government spent something like, I don't want to quote,
I
but
understand. I understand.
I want to say it was close to $1 billion over the past 3 to 5 years just on
Okay.
landscaping services.
Okay.
I might be off on that, but I'm pretty sure, but it's high.
Mm.
So if we know that, right, we know we can go after the work. It's going to be every military base is essentially a small town
Right.
or small city in some
Right.
cases, and they need everything that a regular town, all the infrastructure, everything, and all of
Mm-hmm.
those are paid for through the government contracting process.
Mm-hmm.
Movie theaters, golf courses, there's restaurants and franchises on the bases. There are a huge amount of spending on things like housekeeping and
Right.
cleaning services for the office buildings. So, although not easy, it is pretty straightforward as far as find out who buys what you sell, find the opportunities ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
and start developing the relationship with those purchasers.
So, and I asked that question because some of our listeners on this They'll Never Work podcast, they're just starting out, and sometimes they're looking at the larger picture and not sometimes looking at the finer details of the smaller picture, if you will.
Right.
With that, can you share any success stories of some small businesses, you know, where they might have started off small that has grown into something a little larger than what they anticipated with dealing with governmental contracts?
Yeah, absolutely. And why don't we could change the paradigm here a little bit too, and talk about some of the situations where you might be able to go after a certain type of government contract before you have your commercial sales. It always helps to have something established. But so let's talk about R&D contracts, research and development. So anyone in your audience that is maybe they have a software solution, an application they've developed, or something, or a patent for a technology. You can go after something called small business innovative research contracts. Now, what those do is they essentially are going to award small businesses funding to develop or maybe modify their solution for government need. And it's a smaller lift. It's a process that's developed for companies that aren't used to selling to the government. I have several clients that have had great success in this area. One of those clients was a company that essentially developed a training system for the military and for special forces. And others have done things like virtual reality training, or and there's several, by the way, of these business owners I've interviewed on my podcast, DoD Contract Academy, that you could listen to. But what might that look like is there's a phase one, which you're just saying, hey, this is my idea, right? This is what I'm doing. This is what my software tool does. I think we could modify it in this way to help, whatever your problem set is. And they have topics, and they say, yeah, we like it. So you might win a phase one. And that phase one SBIR might be up to $100,000, $150,000. It's not a huge contract, but you're basically you might be writing a feasibility study or something like that for what they're paying you for. But the real point of phase one is they're now going to try to match you with people in the government that want your offering. I'm going to stick with the software tool, right? And you can look on your own as well. But once you find that person, they just have to sponsor you. Now you can apply for a phase two. And phase two can be up to $1.3 million and actually be higher than that as well. Now that's money you can use to develop that software tool that you keep your IP. The intent for most of this is dual use, so they expect you to sell it to the military and commercial. In fact, part of your proposal is going to be your commercialization strategy. So and some of my clients have used that process several times to help develop their solution instead of using venture capital to get to the point where they can sell commercially and to the government on bigger contracts.
Wow. I never thought of that. So does it consider?
Again, I don't want to say that that's easy. It's a competitive process,
right?
But if you do some of the right things and you kind of learn and take some advice from people that have done it before, you can make yourself much more likely to win those type of contracts and move forward.
So you have given us a lot to think about in this short amount of time. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. It really is.
But before we let you go today, do you have a website, social media, anything you would like to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I would say just check out the website. It's dodcontract.com. We have courses on there. We've got paid for services. We also have all of our podcasts listed there that you can listen to for free, and you can find those on any of iTunes, wherever, Spotify, wherever you go. And that's DoD Contract Academy. If you just type it in, you'll find it. Same thing with LinkedIn. You can look me up. You can either type in DoD Contract Academy or Richard C. Howard. You'll probably find me. I think it's Ricky C. Howard, actually, that I'm.
Yeah, I think it is.
But so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on the website and the podcast. Those are probably the best places.
Really? Okay. Well, I thank you very much for being a guest today. I thank you for giving us this, very pertinent information, timely information, because some of us are really just starting out.
Sure.
And I think that gives people another avenue and who to speak to and create that income coming in that is consistent. Because, right now everything is up and down, up and down.
Right. That's right. Yeah. No, it's something that really helps a lot of the small businesses we work with. And I think having commercial and government funding coming in, it's a great way to grow your company.
Sure. So thank you very much. Everyone go to dodcontract.com. And Mr. Howard, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?